We're going to look at Affinity Photo's astrophotography stacking feature and how we can use it to stack broadband deep sky data and composite it into a full color image, then enhance the signal with additional HA or hydrogen alpha data. We will be using monochrome fit files for this example, and we will be doing the entire workflow in a 32-bit unbounded linear color space. No conversion to 16-bit required. To start with, let's go to File, New Astrophotography Stack, and this brings us into the dedicated persona or workspace for stacking. On the right-hand studio here, we have the Files panel, where we can add our light frames and various calibration frames. Let's start with our light frames, so we will choose Add Files down here, navigate to our Lights folder, and I'm going to start with the red color data. So here are my fit files, but rather than having to select them all, I can just instead select the top level folder and choose Open. Now let's add the calibration frames, so I will add bias frames. Again, just using the top level folder here, and dark frames. And for this setup, we don't have any dark flat or flat frames, so we will simply ignore these two types and move on. Once we've added all of our frames, we're now going to identify hot pixels and column defects by selecting the Bad Pixel Map tool here. This will build up a map of bad pixels within our light frames. So we can decrease the threshold value up here to detect more hot pixels. Now we also have some very faint column defects. We can identify these manually using the column mode, and then just by single clicking on the column, we can easily add it to our bad pixel map like so. And I'll just pan across my document to make sure I can catch the majority of these column defects. Here we go, there's another one. And perhaps some smeared pixels here. I'll just remap those anyway. Okay, I think I've got pretty much all of the defective columns. It doesn't hurt just to zoom in and out and pan around your document just to make sure that you haven't missed any. Okay, once we've identified all of our defects, we can save the bad pixel map as a preset using the cog icon here, then choosing Create Preset. I'll just name this after the telescope name. And that means we can easily reuse it for the other datasets. So we can now click Stack, and Affinity Photo will calibrate, align, and then stack our frames together. Okay, here is our stacked result with some tone stretching. We can click Apply to move back to the photo persona, and across on the Layers panel, we've got a gamma adjustment, some tone stretching with a curves adjustment layer, and then our pixel layer, which is the stacked data. So we will rename this layer to red for now, and we now have to repeat the process for our green and blue data. So go back into the astrophotography stack persona, add our green light frames, then bias frames, dark frames, and just use the bad pixel map tool. Then apply that preset we created previously, click Stack, and stack our green data. Okay, then we can click Apply once again, rename this to green, and do the same procedure for our blue data. So go across to light frames, stack the blue light frames, then the bias frames, and the dark frames. Again, use the Bad Pixel Map tool, apply that Bad Pixel Map preset, click Stack, then click Apply, and rename this pixel layer to blue. Now we have our three sets of data. We just need to get them into the same document. Let's use the red data document as a base. So I will copy the green pixel layer. So Command C on Mac, Control C on Windows, then paste that into my red document. So Command V on Mac, Control V on Windows, and do the same for blue. Now we can just select all three layers by holding Shift and clicking, and set the blend mode to Add. You'll notice that we need to align these layers. Not a problem. First, we just need to initially select the layer we want to use as the base for alignment, so we could use the red layer. Then Shift-click, select the other layers, go to Arrange, and Align Layers by Stars. Okay, now we need to map each monochrome pixel layer to a specific color. To achieve this, we will use a Recolor Adjustment layer. By default, this recolors to red, so we can drag this into our red pixel layer, like so, to clip it. Then very quickly, we can duplicate our existing Recolor Adjustment using Command J on Mac, Control J on Windows, then drag it into the green layer, change the hue to 120 for green, then duplicate again, and do the same for blue, change the hue to 240 degrees. Okay, we now have our full color composite image, but now we need to stack and add our HA data, which is really going to bring out some fantastic detail in the image. So let's go to New Astrophotography Stack once again. Choose to add the light frames. I'm going to choose the HA data now. Go to my bias frames, add those as usual, and then the dark frames. Again, like before, select the Bad Pixel Map tool, use that preset, click Stack, then once again, click Apply, and I'm going to rename the pixel layer to HA. Now, before we copy this layer into the main document, we're going to click drag this levels adjustment and clip it into the HA pixel layer. This will be useful later on. So now we'll copy that HA layer, paste it above our blue layer, and let me just turn off this levels adjustment for a minute, just so we can see more clearly that this is the wrong way round due to a meridian flip. Not a problem. Let's select the blue pixel layer, then Command click on Mac, Control click on Windows to select the HA layer, then go to Arrange and Align Layers by Stars. And now it is correctly rotated. So let's set the layer's blend mode to luminosity, and we'll just enable that levels adjustment again. So this is initially not the result we might be hoping for. We will have to employ some blending techniques to make this work. First, let's expand the HA layer, double-click the levels adjustment, and bring this gamma slider to the right until we start to reveal the color detail underneath. I might just bring this back slightly to brighten the image. The next problem we have is the ugly halos around the star detail, due in part to the HA data having smaller, less bloated stars. We can counteract this by selecting the HA parent layer, then going to the Blend Ranges dialog by clicking the cog icon here, and we simply just need to drag the two right-hand nodes all the way down. This will blend the HA layer out of the highlight detail. So now we're just seeing highlight detail from the three color data layers instead. And finally, we may just want to back off on the opacity slightly so the HA signal isn't as strong, perhaps to around 90%. So we can either just use the opacity slider here, or we can type 9 on the keyboard very quickly. We have a good starting point. We can move on and do some tone and color work. But before we do, let's use the crop tool, so we can select that by using C on the keyboard. and crop away some of the meaningless edge detail. And then just use Return on the keyboard to commit the crop. Now, at the top of the layer stack, we will go to Layer and Merge Visible. This will create a merged pixel layer of all of our work so far. So we'll just rename this layer to Merged. Then on this layer, we will do some quick color denoising. It's actually quite subtle at this point, but if I zoom in quite far, you will see some color noise which will only be exaggerated when we start to work on the colors. So we will tackle it now by going to Filters, Noise, and Denoise. Then I'll just drag my color noise slider up until that noise disappears. Then I'll just use a small amount of luminance denoising as well. Be careful with this, as you don't want to sacrifice too much texture and detail. We'll click Apply. Then we will go to Filters, Astrophotography, and Remove Background. So this is going to enable us to remove the background tone and create a stronger separation between the background and that important deep sky object detail that we want to bring through. So I will click drag to reposition this handle at the top left, check Sample Color at Handle. Then I might also single click down here to add an additional sampler at the bottom right. Then at the moment, this is subtracting the background detail to pure black, which is perhaps not very visually pleasing, so we can raise the output black level until we start to counteract that. Okay, this looks good, so we will click Apply, and then on top of this, we will add a curves adjustment. So Command M on Mac, Control M on Windows. I'll use the picker option here. So I will pick a tone on the background somewhere around, perhaps down here. Then click drag to bring this down further. Then I will click drag to add a second node on the nebula detail here and just push this up like so. Then I'll just click drag and add a bit of a slope here to avoid intensifying the bright stars too much. Okay, it's time to work on the color. Although I ordinarily like to use a selective color adjustment, this time I will experiment with the channel mixer adjustment. So with this, on the red channel, I'm going to bring the red contribution up, and that will really bring back some of that nice, vibrant red detail. Then I might go and add my selective color adjustment. And let's just zoom in so we can see this in more detail. I might just switch across to cyans, bring the cyan contribution up to 100%, and the yellows down to minus 100%. And let me just show you the before and the after. So that's quite a subtle change. It just brings out a little more vibrant blue detail in the stars here. Okay, now perhaps we just want a bit more separation between the background and our deep sky objects here. There's nothing wrong with using a straightforward brightness and contrast adjustment for this. So I can just bring the contrast up slightly until I start to see a bit more of that separation there, and then perhaps just increase the brightness. Then I might want to do some structure enhancement. And for this, I can use a live clarity filter from the layer menu here. Because this is a live filter, it child layers by default, so we can just drag this out to the top of the layer stack, bring the strength up to 100%, close that down, and now we might want to just apply this selectively to just the Flame Nebula and the Horsehead Nebula. So we can go to Layer and Invert, then get the Paintbrush tool, increase the brush width, take the hardness down on the context toolbar here, move across to color, make sure we're set to white, and just paint in over those areas where we want to enhance the structure. So this really helps bring out some of that fainter nebula detail. Okay. Our final step then is to crop our composition so we don't have the distracting light glow in these two corners. So once again, I will use C for the crop tool, just bring that in, and perhaps bring this up slightly as well. Then use return on the keyboard, and that also just tightens up our composition and improves our framing as well. And there we go, that will do for my edit, but I would encourage you to experiment further with your own workflow. Do have a look at the other astrophotography video tutorials, as I use various different techniques and features in each one. I hope you found this video useful, and thank you for watching.